Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special 3-in-1 episode of the Grassroots Truthcast WMXI interview series and America Beyond the Noise. What you're about to hear is from an insider within Israel, a 35-year military veteran and political and military analyst specializing in military affairs. He knows what's going on in Israel, and Gene sits down with him in an exclusive interview. Then Gene and Michael Pohl continue the conversation 2 days later, where they take clips from this exciting interview and break it down in ways where we can not only understand what's going on in Israel, but what we can do as Americans to help support Israel and stop the pain. Then there's a follow-up interview with Gene and Michael Pohl that continues the conversation and helps us to truly not only understand what's really going on in Israel, but what's going to happen the days, weeks, months to come and how we can help. So at this time, enjoy this special 3-in-1 WMXI Grassroots Truthcast America Beyond the Noise episode with Gene Valentino, Michael Pohl, and Elliot Chodoff.
This war that's going on in Israel has captured everyone's attention. It's tragic. And when you look at the savagery that these Hamas militants have against the Israeli people, it is unbelievable. I told you yesterday, I'll say it again today, I was raised that the Israeli people, the Jewish people, are the chosen ones by God. And I'm just going to tell you, they have been persecuted for a long, long time. And they finally got their own state. What was it, back in 1947, I think, something like that.
After in World War II.
And now we see that they are still trying to take it back from them. And so that's what we're looking at here. And it's horrible. But at the same time, it makes us realize, and it shows the fallacy of some of the policies of this administration. And so what we want to do now, we're going to bring in Gene Valentino. And Gene, of course, is our regular Friday guest. Gene, welcome in, by the way. Good morning.
Good morning. I wish we could meet more often, but on better terms.
Yeah. So you and I talked yesterday. You had a great, and you sent it to me, and I took some excerpts from it, but you had a great interview with a guy who is, I guess you could say, well, describe him to me, actually.
His name is Elliot Chodoff, Chodoff. He's a military consultant, advisor. He's an officer of the Israeli Defense Forces. My interview with him went 1 hour yesterday morning at 5 a.m., which was 1 p.m. Israeli time. We talked surprisingly for a full hour. I was very grateful for the generosity of time he gave me. I was even more surprised with the depth of Israeli intelligence information he revealed in terms of the actual attacks going on in the villages and streets by Hamas outside of the Gaza Strip. And more specifically, what he described were the impacts in various areas around the nation. There's so much more to share with you, Michael, but...
All right, so let's do this. I wanted to play some excerpts from... I mean, it was an hour long. There's no way we can obviously do that. But I pulled some things out of there. This segment that you had with him is about 6 minutes, 20 seconds, something like that. So let's get into this, and then we'll discuss more as we come back. So here we go. Elliot, how do you say his name? Chodoff? Chodoff. Elias Chodoff. I'm bad with these foreign names. I'm sorry, sir, if you are listening. But in any case, here's part of the interview.
The perceived weakness of the United States on the part of Iran, in part because of the administration, in part because of all sorts of things that have gone on for decades in America. It's not just, this didn't just start yesterday. But if you add to that the conflict that's going on in Congress, I think it's all part of the strategic backdrop. In addition, I think that they made an enormous strategic error, and it's one that I can understand, and I can even explain it, in thinking that the mass demonstrations in Israel against Netanyahu and the government and the judicial reform would play out the way demonstrations would play out in Iran if an invader launched an attack during that period. If there were an attack on Iran during a massive demonstration period like we've seen over the past few months in Israel, those demonstrators would probably join the attackers to try to overthrow the government. What happened here is that the minute the attack started, the demonstrations ended. Everybody, there was a whole movement, we're not going to serve in the reserves because as part of the protest. That disintegrated. It evaporated instantaneously. Everybody showed up for reserve duty. The demonstration leaders themselves made a public statement that everybody should show up for reserve duty. And all of a sudden, this attack took an extremely divided Israel and unified it in lightning speed, which I think they didn't anticipate. I'm sure they didn't anticipate. And now they're surprised that it unified Israel. Now, to your question about going after Hamas and going after Iran. First things first. If we let Hamas off the hook in any way, shape, or form, the leadership of this country is bankrupt. Okay.
Can I say
Yes.
Specifically, is this going to be America's Vietnam? Are you going to get in there and decisively put actions in place in the next 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks? Or are we talking 10 years like Vietnam?
No. So first of all, we don't have that kind of time. Remember, this is a reserve military. I mentioned 300,000 have been called up. Remember, this is a country with a population of about 10 million people, men, women, children, elderly, everybody. 300,000 men, primarily, some women, but primarily men, being called up from civilian life and put into the military means that the economy of this country is coming to a screeching halt. Okay, in other words, a stopwatch has been started, and we can't sit around for weeks figuring out what we want to do with ourselves and what we want to be when we grow up. This has got to be an operation, as I mentioned before. My belief is that it's going within the next 24 hours, and I think that's a long estimate. I'd be very surprised if it'll be that long. And it's an operation that has to be over in days, not weeks. Now, when I say days, I'm not saying 2 or 3 or 5. It might take a week. It might take 10 days. But it's a time frame that will be measured in counting days, not in counting weeks.
It's October 9th, 2023. So you're talking about some time here before the end of October.
Yes. I think if we're still messing around in Gaza by the middle of November, this operation will be a failure.
Do you anticipate heavy forces coming in of Israeli forces, or are you anticipating the help of the United States with I'd call heavy forces?
No. First of all, we have more than enough force. Israel's policy has always been, and I'm a staunch advocate of this, we will do our own fighting. What we want from our friends, and primarily our main friend in the world, which is the United States, we're way beyond allies, I think, is cover our backs, provide us with the wherewithal, and with all due respect, get out of our way.
I'm very concerned that the extraction of hostages that are in place now has obviously the speed at which you move must be tied to the speed at which the extraction of hostages occurs if you're going in there to obliterate them.
That would be in a perfect world. I am afraid that that's not going to be, and I say afraid because I think it's the only way to do it. The hostages have to be protected as best possible, but within the context of a military operation. In other words, if the military goes in there primarily to rescue hostages, it will fail.
I believe you are absolutely correct. My only concern is what role did we, if we're your friend, which is more than an ally, did we screw up, Elliot? Did the Biden administration get too close to Iran? Were we soft pedaling our negotiations with them, which gave license to them to move with more confidence and speed and deliberation against Israel?
Yes, I believe so. Any even the slightest moral assistance you give to a murderous fascist style regime will always have disproportionate impact on their behavior, because they'll take even the slightest hint of weakness or support or cozying up as saying, okay, they're giving us free rein to do anything we want. And I would say that certainly contributes to it. But I think we need to be clear on something. They are the epitome, the textbook example of evil in the world today. And the best we can do is mitigate it and ultimately eradicate it. You cannot negotiate with evil on that scale.
That's exactly right. You cannot. And what a great segment that was, Gene. He predicted, first of all, that they would be, within 24 hours, they would be in Gaza taking care of this problem. He talked about the fact that we don't need you to come fight for us. What we need is you to get out of our way and help us with supplies, with munitions, with things of that nature. So I think that, Israel is one of those countries that you really don't have to worry about them. They're not scared to fight. They're not scared of the fight. And they're going to go in there and take care of business. They're already doing it. I'm monitoring the news, a couple of different news channels here in my studio. I mean, they're right now, they are wide open. Now, Ted mentioned something earlier that he heard that every building that they bombed, that they were going to kill a hostage or something like that. And he mentioned that too. He said this is a military exercise. If they can get the hostages, they will. But if they go for the hostages, it looks like that would make this military operation a failure. So, unfortunately for those folks that were made hostages, a lot of them probably won't make it out. I mean, that's the way it looks, at least for now.
Welcome to war.
Yeah, it's terrible, but yet we can sort of pin this on bad decisions, not just by the Biden administration, by the way. This has been going on a long time in the United States, and we've got, and I mentioned this earlier, we've got, the enemy is within. We have people here in the United States right now that are not friends of our country, that are protesting on the streets right now in New York City. We have the enemy with us.
Yeah, Michael, this is, while you're talking, first, thank you for this special report you've put together for today. We usually meet on Fridays. I'm honored to be with you under harsh conditions. Right now, as we speak, complementing your point, there are 31 Harvard organizations up in Massachusetts that are pro-Palestinian, blaming Israel for the injuries now caused to the 1,500 deaths to Hamas terrorists, which lit the match in this gas tank in the first place. This is a deep state. I asked him about the deep state. He agreed that there might be something more pervasive going on, but was, as a military analyst, very focused on the issues of the day in Israel. He is he has dual citizenship. He's American and Israeli. He knows New York City very well. He's been raised in Chicago. He went back to Israel and became part of the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, which for some over there is code for cover for the intelligence services. Right. That's as far as I'll go with what I want to talk about there. All I can tell you is I had a very credible source that gave me great information. He raised his eyebrows when I brought up, after the interview, he raised his eyebrows when we brought up questions related to the State Department and maybe spies within the State Department, only to see on the news this morning, Michael, a State Department individual under the Biden administration going back to Obama, who was transmitting data into Iran years ago. This isn't just about Hamas. They're a ragtag organization down in the Gaza Strip. This is about a deeper state conspiracy that has ties to Iran within our own government. And the White House has got blue lights on the front showing support for Israel while the turnip is in the backyard having a barbecue. I mean, I don't know what to make of this, but we really must go after the internal workings of our own nation and extricate those who have compromised our national security for us to truly be effective leaders in this nation, not just good allies to Israel.
You know, this country is upside down. We everything that was right is now wrong. And, you know, it's not just the issues with the Israelis and the Jewish community. It's not just that. It's everything in this country. And that tells you that there's a plan in this country right now by enemies of this country that are inside this country, that have even been elected in this country, that are trying to do something to lessen the effects of the American way and the American system throughout the world. They don't want it. They don't want to have anything to do with us. They want us to leave them alone. They want to do their terror stuff over there. They're savages. These people are savages.
Well, I've got some research I'm doing, and I plan to announce it on your show on Friday morning at 7:15.
By the way, Friday, we can't do it. We got something else going on. So we'll have to do it Thursday.
Well, we'll do it Thursday then. Okay. I'm doing some research right now, which is even more late-breaking, and I don't have my act together on it yet to give you the full story, other than to tell you that these same... Well, I don't have all the information in front of me, but I'm getting confirmation. But to this individual who was compromising our national security, and those pallets of cash that ended up on the tarmac in Iran, we're now approaching $50 to $60 billion unloaded by the Obama and Biden administrations into the hands of Iran. It's not about $6 billion on a hostage swap recently. It's about the 50 to 60 billion they're sitting on of American dollars, which is what's funding this issue in Hamas, which is what I fear armed Lebanon to the north with hundreds of thousands of higher tech missiles that are aimed just 40 miles to the south at my friend we had the interview with, Elliot Chodoff, 40 miles away. Can you think of what 40 miles is?
Quickly, I have one more segment. You were doing some questioning, and I want people to hear this as well. So let's go with segment number 2 from your show on your Grassroots Truthcast yesterday.
With Elliot Chodoff, he's a political and military consultant and analyst for the Israeli Defense Forces. He's here on his own with us today, talking candidly about the issues of how Israel has been responding to this surprise attack from Hamas, originating today in the Gaza Strip. Elliot, what do you see in recapping? What do you see the future here? What's your military plan of attack in the next 2 weeks to the extent to which you can reveal, and where do you see this going?
Well, let me start by saying that on the ancient and oft repeated principle that no plan survives contact with the enemy, everything that I'm saying now is with that caveat. Within the next less than a day, I would say, I think that we are going to have a full-scale ground invasion of Gaza. The purpose is to destroy Hamas as an organization, eliminate its military capability, and that will require a huge amount of force, a huge amount of violence. I don't believe that we are going to show the particular care that we've shown in the past. They've crossed all the lines in the last few days, and the lines just aren't there anymore.
So he says, basically, what did I hear there? He says, we're about to go bust their ass right now, and there's not going to be any, in other words, we're going after them. We're not going to stop. We're going to do it until it's over.
Let me say that I walked away from that interview with the following statement meaning a lot more to me. He knows when to use a feather, and he knows when to use a hammer.
That's right.
He's using a feather on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. but it's only days, if not weeks away. You may see something unprecedented against the real enemy and the perpetrator of all of this, Iran.
Yeah.
It'll be beyond comprehension, and I fear the worst.
Yeah. The guy is very tactful. He is obviously very well educated and understands what exactly is going on over there. And I think that was probably really, I mean, this has been some of the best information that I have heard, even with all the national news media. You know, here's Gene Valentino down in Pensacola, Florida, pulling this off. I think it was a great thing that you did there, and I hope a lot of folks. Let's tell people quickly how they can watch the full interview.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Before you break, www.genevalentino.com. Click on Grassroots Truthcast. We have an interview there that runs 1 hour with Elliot Chodoff, military analyst, specialist, and officer in the Israeli Defense Forces. He gives intelligence and insight that I have not seen on the national news. And I think the truth is there's going to be some bigger issues coming in the next 2 weeks. We'll hope to be reporting back to you.
All right, Gene, thank you so much. We are done with our time today, but that was very interesting, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, Michael.
Good morning, Gene.
Good morning, gentlemen.
All right, so I guess we should start out maybe by just recapping what we have learned this week about what's going on in Israel. You've got some very good connections over there. Tell us what you know and what's happening.
Thank you for having me, Ted and Michael. Last Tuesday, you had me on as a recap to a 1 hour special report we did on Gene Valentino's Grassroots Truthcast. This was a 1 hour segment with an Israeli Defense Forces officer, Elliot Chodoff. He was reporting to us live from behind the lines, only 40 miles from the Lebanon border, with 250,000 plus Russian-made missiles focused from the north south onto Israel, while the main event was underway in the Gaza Strip. And moments ago, this sixth day, we're now in the sixth day of conflict here in Israel, with 25 Americans killed by Hamas. We find ourselves in the situation with many more Americans, some with dual citizenship, being at risk. And moments ago, just as you were coming on the air, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was side by side with Bibi Netanyahu, bringing forward to the nation of Israel and the world the notice that this nation of Israel will be supported unequivocally and without partisanship by America, with America's full strength and force of its resources, to allow Israel to proceed with a very dramatic attack against Hamas in particular. Now, Iran is behind all this, and that's a fight for another day. Today, the fight is against Hamas, and they will be brought to ashes, as Elliot Chodoff said, in a matter of days, maybe a few weeks, but not months and years like Vietnam. This will be a strategic and an immediate response to the atrocities imposed not only on Israel, but on the world. The fact is, there were many from around the world, many nations from around the world with citizens brought to death by this crazy group, the Hamas. The Hamas is ISIS, and ISIS was crushed, and so will Hamas. And right now, Michael, I remind myself of what we said just a few days ago. It was a quote from the Bible. Quote, "Foreigners who live in your land will gain more and more power while you gradually lose yours. They will have money to lend you, but you will have none to lend them." In the end, they will be your rulers. So this is the sixth day, Michael. And Secretary of State Blinken said moments ago, these people must be annihilated. This must be a moment of moral clarity. Moral clarity is the key word. We can have our bickering events politically, one political party versus the other, but stop it. Today, we must unite as one force and take on the evil this nation is experiencing in Israel. I've said enough.
Wow, it is true though. If you continue to let foreigners, I didn't realize that was in the Bible. I never heard that before, but that's interesting.
Deuteronomy.
Well, we are allowing the same thing to happen here in this country. We're allowing foreigners to come into this country, and we don't know who they are. We don't know what drugs they're carrying. We don't know what diseases they're carrying. And to a certain extent, our country has been changed forever because of the policies of not only this administration, but many administrations. Actually, we've allowed this border situation to get out of control, not just under Biden. It's just come to what I would consider to be a peak time under Biden. But you can go all the way back to Republican presidents, Democrat presidents. Everybody has said, hey, let's do something about this border, but nobody seems to want to do anything about it. And then when you have a president, by the way, who decides he's going to do something about it, did you see the uproar, the screaming, the hollering? Everybody was losing their mind about the border being actually closed up. And that tells you a lot about our elected officials in this country.
There will be a reckoning on the recklessness of our own border. It will be a matter of a few months away, regrettably too late, but it'll be months away at the next election. I wish we could move more quickly. And I think that'll be a governing change we make in our governing structure, our constitution in the future. Today, Israel's problem is now our problem. We have got to get to Iran and neutralize them completely. I heard while you were talking moments ago before we went live, two young 20-year-old volunteers, reservists, of the 500,000 Israelis in the reservists corps, preparing now for the ground invasion. Those two reservists in their 20s live on national TV were at that music festival on the border at the Gaza Strip just a few days ago, talking about how they got hold of a vehicle and got up to 70, 80 miles an hour in an open field to escape from the machine gun fire from the Hamas that was desecrating all of those innocent people in an open concert on the Gaza Strip border. Is now to think what you just said. There is no room for sympathy. Anybody in the United States thinking that it's time for passive standing down and trying to figure out how to negotiate some neutral mid-ground is heresy. It's absolute succumbing to a world enemy that we talked about in past episodes as the deep states. This is outrageous, and we have to do something about it to neutralize them. To think that 31 Harvard student groups were out protesting just yesterday over this inhumane treatment Israel is showing in their counterattack tells us that when we get our hands clean of the blood in Israel, we need to focus on this reckless left progressive behavior that has tried to overcome the Democrat Party and nearly take us down as a nation.
It's amazing, and I haven't felt the I guess people feel differently now than they did just last week this time, because when you see the savagery of people who have no care for humans, period, but if you're Jewish, somehow you are a devil. I just don't understand how you can treat another human the way that now it's one thing to be in war. It's one thing to be shooting at guys that can shoot back. But to shoot innocent people, that is something that we have always understood to be murder. And
it's murder by any standard.
Yeah. And if you murder people, you have to pay the price. If we can catch you, we're going to make you pay the price. So those people that left that music festival, now they're in uniform with a gun, and it's going to be a different ball game for the folks that they run across, Hamas or whoever that's shooting at them next time, because they're going to be able to shoot back.
Well, today's issue is President Netanyahu and his intelligence forces. I know firsthand through my contacts have done their job at putting everybody on notice in the Gaza Strip. Get the hell out. If you're not out, you're in trouble. This is about to happen. Not a matter of days anymore. It's moments by moments. They've cleared the field. Watch the news in the next 48 hours. There will be a leveling of those people in the Gaza Strip that'll transform the pages in the history book.
We got about 3 minutes left in our segment, and I wanted to go back over, if we could, and change subjects back to the Speaker of the House. At a very critical time in our history, in the country's history, we have a House of Representatives that cannot operate and function properly because they don't have a leader. There is a suggestion that Steve Scalise will be the leader. He got most of the votes. However, there's still some holdouts. And one of them may actually be the congressman from your area who is still causing problems in Washington. I call him a show horse, actually. There's a time for that kind of stuff. And there's a time when you should keep your mouth shut and support your party.
That's correct.
So I wonder just what you think about that today as compared to last week this time.
Well, it was cute and attractive just a week ago, but here are the consequences of throwing a grenade into the pond. We have an less than perfectly running Congress right now that can't even get a House Speaker chosen. And we have international issues and policy that are in hands of a turnip and a cackle in Washington, D.C. And we are relying on the Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, to stand next to Netanyahu because Biden is incapable of doing so. To your point about Congressman Matt Gaetz, while his intentions may have been pure within his own mind, there are consequences for throwing a grenade into the pond, and we're left with less than perfect governance. Now, I'm happy with either Scalise or Jordan if Kevin McCarthy won't come back and take it and if the votes are not there. But I'm more concerned about that congressional rule that allowed just one person. Nancy Pelosi didn't have that rule. She wanted to protect her little kingdom. She made it that you had to have 6 people to a dozen people voted in to get her to get thrown out. So no one would come together in that group to throw her out. So she was protected. And as a consequence, they could play this game in Congress of not running a budget through until the 11th hour, forcing the Republicans to vote in crap that wasn't really in the nation's best interest and threw us further in debt. Yeah. That rule's got to change in Congress, and new congressmen and women coming in need to make that rule change so you can have fair and equitable government governing in Congress to present the president a budget months in advance of the deadline for the next fiscal year, so that it has been vetted completely with clarity of thought. I know we're out of time, but kudos
We
to
are.
Representative Derek Van Order Republican from Wisconsin, for putting politics aside and getting behind Biden to unify this nation behind Israel.
Gotcha. Good morning. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Best to you.